Welcome to Orange County Power Players, where we spotlight the personal, professional, and financial success stories of OC's top leaders. Here's your host, Danny Flores.
Welcome back to OC Power Players, where I interview some of the most successful people in Orange County. I'm Danny Flores, your host, and today's honored guest is Dr. Jeff DeLeon, zooming in from Anaheim. Dr. Leon is a foreign-trained physician working as a COO in clinical trials. He leads a team of 180 people, helping develop new and better medications. Welcome, Dr. DeLeon.
Thank you, Danny. Very happy to be here. Thank you for that introduction as well.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell us what you do. You do clinical trials, and it looks like you have this massive team doing it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks again for this. Yeah, so what we do is we help the pharma companies, whatever size they may be, or even the government, and try to develop the medications. So what usually happens, Danny, is let's say there's a scientist or there is a group of people who wants to develop a medication. The usual first step is they want to do some computer programming, modeling, things of that nature. And then the next step is they're going to do some test tube testings, animals. And when it's now time to go for healthy people or to the human part, then they can't do it by themselves. And so they look for companies like us. And what we do is we execute the trial for them, meaning we look for these patients, we give them the study medication, and then we note the effects of it, and then we give that data for them. So that's pretty much what we do. It's a fairly newish industry, so to speak. With the COVID vaccines, it kind of brought us to the limelight for clinical trials. It's funny before the before the COVID, when they see me in scrubs and I go to Target or Walmart, say, "Where do you work?" And I say, "I work in clinical trials." And they say, "Oh, guinea pigs." I was like, "Yeah, but no, it's more than that, right?"
Right,
But
right.
with the COVID vaccine, it kind of helped us to be more, bring more awareness to people. So I don't know if I'm sure your listeners or your watchers are aware that during the pandemic, March 2020, there was such a big push to do these clinical trials, and we actually helped develop those COVID vaccines, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Now to dig in a little bit more, how long? So you figure out a disease that you want to target, then you start testing on animals. How long
Yep.
does that take, and what kind of results do you want to see before you move to humans? And how long does it take? That whole process take?
Oh yeah, and again, clinical research, Danny, is a big industry. We're talking about millions and millions of people in all over the world, right? So a group of people will specifically do that, and what they're looking for is certain markers, certain things like they testing pretty much your hypothesis, like what we learn in school, right? If we
Right.
give this or we attack this enzyme or we do this, what will happen to the other markers, so to speak? And those markers are your, let's say, from like a heart rate change or any hormonal change that there is. It's a good way of understanding and appreciating the whole process of it. I know you just mentioned from the animals to the humans, but the whole process from the start until your doctor can prescribe your medication, that will take like 10 to 15 years. It's a long process. And funny enough, I'm sure your listeners and everyone else are aware there's a big Ozempic, Wegovy thing. We actually did that like 10 years ago. So it's kind of cool to see the hard work that you put way in the before, and now people are seeing the good effects of it.
Now, you said 10 to 15 years, but I guess rumor has it that the COVID vaccine was fast tracked and wasn't
It
10 to
was.
15 years.
It was. So there's a good book by the CEO of Pfizer. I actually gave it to all people. So what happened there was, number one, all the red tape was removed because there's a lot of process. I'm not saying red tape in a bad way. It's just a lot of steps that you have to do. Number two is based on the book, Pfizer specifically, they made a gamble, meaning when you're doing clinical trials, you just put your bet on one horse and then see it goes to the different race, and then you assess because one horse will be worth 10, 20, $30 billion of funding, right? So what
Right.
happened with COVID, which is kind of interesting, is they have already four in the pipeline that they have on line, and they just pretty much said we don't know what's gonna be the good effect of this, or if it's even gonna reach the stage. But because the world is shut down, let's just do all four. So they made pretty much a gamble that hopefully, and one of them made a successful for that. So,
Mhm.
and number two is the mRNA technology has been present 10 to 15 years already. It's already been there. So when people say it's all brand new, it's fast track in a sense that number one, they made kind of like four projects at the same time. And it's very rarely done because of the money, because of the resources involved.
Right.
And then the
Right.
second thing is the phases. They fast tracked it as well. Usually you do, as I mentioned, animals, and then you go humans first, the healthy people. That will take maybe 2 to 5 years. And then once you're done with that, then you go to the next step, meaning once you get the signal, then you get the next step, phase two, and then phase three, and phase four. What Pfizer specifically did is they combine everything, like 10 to 15 years in nice, because that is very inspirational, so to speak. So the science is there. Yeah,
Right.
one of the
Right.
questions is that the science is there.
Now, do you have to figure for people's reaction to any vaccine or any medication that you're working on to be different if it's in the United States or if it's in a third world country? People's bodies might be different, their diet might
Oh,
be different, the environment's different, everything's different, right? Is your reaction expected to be different as well?
that's true. So that's one important thing that you brought up is right now there's a push for diversity in clinical trials, right? Because you need to have different people with different ethnicities be
Mhm.
represented in that. So in then like 30, 40 years ago, it was mostly in a specific population. However, let's say there was a story in here wherein they found out that African Americans affect the metabolism of certain high blood pressure medications differently from Caucasians, right? And this is literally our doctors are adjusting those rates, making sure we're not overgiving them. So you are absolutely right. There are testings now that takes into effect the different backgrounds and ethnicities and how that specific person will do. So one thing that our company does extremely well is we do a lot of ethnic bridging trials. So ethnic bridging trials means this is a type of study that specifically address what you just mentioned. Hey, let's say I'm Japanese or I'm Chinese. My body may react differently. We need a counterpart for that. So we are doing that, and our company is great since we're in California, right? There's a lot of different diverse people here.
Right,
And
right.
also, another thing that you mentioned that's kind of included is we have different regulatory agencies in the world. Like you have the FDA for the States, you have the PMDA for Japan, you have the European, and they may have different requirements. So you're
Right.
absolutely right. There's going to be different testing depending on the people that the medication is intended to.
So do you test in other countries too? Because you would hope that pharma wants to create something that helps the world, not just people in the United States, I would imagine.
Correct. Yeah, so that's where the diversity will come into play, but also depends on the pharmaceutical company, the one doing this, how what approach they want.
Mhm.
Usually they go to the states first, the FDA, just because it's a robust guidelines that they can follow and they can use. However, bringing back to your point, let's say a medication is already approved in the US, the FDA, and they went all through the testings, they went all it's safe, if it's effective, they cannot just go to another continent like Europe or Japan if they don't do another step for them. So it's a whole process. Again, the goal of this, as you said, is just to help everyone and to make sure it's
Right,
safe for
right,
people.
right. Now, all of this costs a lot of money.
Yes.
It has,
Yes.
how do you guys seek funding and how do you convince and who's the governing body that you have to convince to say, hey, we see this ailment. We want to find a cure for it. We want to start clinical studies and trials and testing. How do you convince somebody to say, okay, you know what, we'll fund it.
Yeah.
And then what does that look like? I mean, it probably millions of dollars.
With a B. billion. So the
Billion.
so the good thing, Dan, is I'm
Okay.
not part of that. I'm not part of that. I'm more on executing the clinical trials. So, but the thought process you're saying is yes, there's pharma companies. So what they do, and we work with all pharma companies, like the big ones and the small ones, right?
Huh?
So what they do is they have the research and development. So they're looking, forecasting in the future, what's the current need, and how do we
Mhm.
address that, and um, is there value for that we can do? And again, we're not part of this. This is more for them. But let me give an example. So right now, there's a big push in terms of not only with obesity medication but also diabetes. You want a medication that can combine the two because in the future, 5 to 10 years from now, this is probably going to be the issue that we have. Now, when you said, is it? How can I say this? Is it justifiable to spend billions of dollars on that? That's going to be their discussion, right? In terms of
Right.
the market slice that they're going to get, in terms of how different regulatory agencies will get. So that's going to be the pharmaceutical sponsor's decision to make.
Yeah, I guess it's, and then maybe I'm wrong, but it could potentially be self-funded, right, initially. But by the pharma companies, they say, hey, listen, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna spend millions or billions of dollars on trying to develop a medication for it, and then they get their money back when they profit from the sale of the
Sure.
medicine.
True. You're right. There's a lot of biotechs who does that. So
Mhm.
you imagine a big pharma company will have 100,000, 200,000 employees, but there are also a group of companies that start small, like 20, 50 people, and they develop a medication. And then their hope is the money that they get in, once a big pharma buys that medication, then they can earn some of it. For the big
Right,
pharma, it's one of the things I think. Again, I'm not part of this. I think it's the potential market share that it can get, right? So if you have a
right,
disease that doesn't have a firm medication, let's say Alzheimer's, there's no firm treatment for that. So
right,
sometimes
right,
that will help them decide maybe we should go to Alzheimer's because it's worth it. If there's no other treatment for that, then we can get a bigger part of that and help other people. So again,
right,
just depending on what level you're thinking from.
right. Now I was, you mentioned Ozempic and
Yeah.
weight loss medication.
Yep.
Has anybody said, "Hey, wait a minute, let's not. Why are we attacking this? I don't know. It's called a disease, being overweight that way, and let's change the food for people instead of just having medicating people. Is just changing the food that we eat,
Yeah.
and it should change us basically, right?
Correct. Correct. No, you're right. I mean, that should be the initial approach in medicine. Like you do the lifestyle guidelines, you be active, you eat the right food. However, the medication will come into play if the assumption is you already made those, right?
Okay.
Meaning you already
Yeah.
addressed those. Then you can go the Wegovy, things of that nature, or Ozempic, or whatever. Now you brought up another topic, and we can spend a lot of time in that one. But there's a lot of levels and layers there. But what I can say very briefly is yes, that's the initial approach, right? If you have a certain disease, some of this disease, let's say diabetes, our initial approach for that diabetes is maintain a good lifestyle, meaning
Right.
active, 20 minutes a day, whatever the case may be, watch your carbohydrates, your sugar. And then if that doesn't work for quite some time, and we know, the patient gave their best, then maybe that's a time that we could consider just medications. But if I have it my way, like you said, just try to be healthy. But
Right.
sometimes it's hard. Yeah.
But that's hard, right? That takes
Yeah.
work.
It does. It does. Especially me during COVID. I don't know if it happened to you, Danny. During COVID, when we were working from home for a few months, I was just grazing. In the kitchen, you just pass by
Yeah. Yeah.
and you eat, but you're not
Yeah.
hungry. You're just grazing.
And you think it's not a lot of food
Yeah.
because it's very small portions, but
Yeah.
you have to add that up. And
Yeah.
when you add it up, you're like, whoa, it's like 2,000, 3,000, four
Yeah.
thousand
Yeah.
calories. And it's like, I'm gaining weight. Like, what?
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything. I'm just
That's
grazing.
true.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But the goal has always been, less medication if you could, but if for those people who need kind of help, either jump start or just, and then that's where the medication will come into play.
Right. So your company works for multiple
Mhm.
pharmaceutical companies doing these clinical trials for them, right?
Correct. So what we do is we are known as partial, like a contract research organization, kind of like a contractor, right?
Right.
If you are building a house, certain people will do certain things. And what we do specifically is help all the pharma companies um, find those patients, give them the medication, and then get the data from them. So we do have, and it's not a conflict of interest because we sign confidentiality agreements. We're not telling this sponsor A versus sponsor B of what they're doing because we can't do that. But it's important to have this process because um, the approving agency, which is the FDA, they will need data from actual people that we collect the data from, right? They will not have an approval for medication if it didn't go through this process. So it's kind of interesting at our end that we can see the trends, of like different pharma companies, and they are going to one direction in terms of addressing that need. So I did mention, Danny, earlier the obesity and diabetes. I mean, multiple pharma companies are going to that direction because this is where the population is going to be going the next 5 to 10, 20 years.
Right. So then is it safe to say that as you guys pick up different contracts, you guys are doing different type of trials with different companies?
Yes.
Okay. So that would almost mean that you need a lot of people to participate in these type of trials. How do you find them?
Correct.
How do you, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you have a medication that you need, and I don't know how many people, right?
Sure.
How many people do you have to test on over the time,
Mm.
over the period? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? And how do you find those people?
Good question. So going back to the stages, so there's different phases of clinical trial development, and the number changes from one phase to the next, right? So remember the story from the test tube to the animals and then the humans. So the first time that we're using it to humans, we want to make sure it's absolutely safe for everyone. So the number is going to be relatively small. So we're talking
What
about
does that number look
50,
like?
like 50 to 100 people,
Okay.
right? 50 to 100 people. And usually this will last for around 3 to 6 months. Once the data is good, the signal is good, everyone's safe, we see what we want to see, the sponsor side, then we're going to go to phase two. And phase two will be around 1,000 to
Okay.
2,000 patients.
Right.
And that usually lasts around 2 to 3 years, 5 years. And then once that's done, then you move on to phase three, which is the mass. And we're talking about 10, 20, 30, 50,000. So
Wow.
in a given medicational, in a given research pathway, we're talking about like 50,000. So COVID, I think they needed like 60,000 to be tested for that one. So it's a big number. And when you're in a study, you cannot join other studies. So we need to make sure it's safe for you. So pretty much if us, we have a project of multiple trials, these are different patients. So when you're saying
Right.
where we're getting it from, traditionally we get it from advertisement. You see it in the billboards, or you listen to a radio or to music, or I'm dating here, Penny Saver, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Craigslist. We advertise those, but since we've been doing this for quite some time, 43 years, we have our own database already, meaning throughout all the years we get it from there. But other clinical sites, it's normal to advertise,
Right.
right? Saying, hey, if you're healthy or you have diabetes, you want free medication. And this is, by the way, approved by we call it the IRB, which is in charge of making sure the patients are safe as well, right?
Right.
We need someone to do that. So patients are usually from recruitment, depending on the study population. Then it can also be from the network of doctors that we work with.
Right.
Let's say for specific indication for, I don't know, like Crohn's or IBS, then you go to like a GI doctor that can have that population for you. So just depending on the type of studies that you're running.
Right. Now, what's your company's footprint in the United States as far as kind of gathering people? Do you gather them all from one state, or national where you kind of have different groups from different areas feeding from different areas?
Yeah, so our company right now is nationwide. We have 18 sites across the country. So from California to Florida, we have those. So our footprint is pretty much probably the largest now in this type of industry, this type of setup, right? So most of the time, you want to have people that you recruit for patients in that area because we don't expect them to travel back and forth for visits. Because when you join
Right.
a study, depending on the design, you can be seen like every day or every 5 days. And so having people coming from different states is not is not advisable for that,
Right.
except if it's like an ultra rare condition, then of course we have to do that,
Right.
right? If you're looking but one out of a million people who have that, then you have to do everything else that you could, right? But our footprint as a company is relatively big. As I mentioned, it's 18 sites all over. We're talking about 1,500 employees. And recruitment wise, again, depending on the type of study, then you may do your in-house recruiter, meaning our known patients, or you can advertise as needed.
Now, do you look, let's say if you're targeting a certain disease and you're doing clinical trials in a certain disease, do you want somebody that has that disease to be part of the trials to see how it reacts with them? Or do you want somebody just perfectly healthy that you're giving the medicine to?
Very good question. So that's where the phases will come into play, right? So the different phases. So let's say we want to develop a an obesity medication, or let's say maybe a heart failure medication. So for the phase one that I did mention earlier, what you want to do is get patients without the heart failure, but these are your healthy people, because you can anticipate more how the body will react if that's the case. You don't want to go directly to where the disease condition is. Now, phase two, which is a couple of hundred, then you may mix some of them, but definitely for phase three, you need someone who has that condition that you want to treat to be part of that. So as you can see, it's a stepwise approach, not only for safety, but also for the data that we get, and it will guide us moving forward, meaning the sponsor side.
Wow, that's very interesting. Now, if as we wrap up our interview, we're in the first past in the second quarter already of 2025. What
Mhm.
exciting plans and do you guys have for the rest of the year?
Well, I just scheduled a company party. That's fun.
Oh, those are
But I'm
good.
sure, I'm sure
You can't
I
go
just
wrong
reserved a
with
whole
those.
bowling alley. But I'm sure you're talking about clinical trials. Yeah, so for now, again, the big push that we've seen in the industry as a whole is in terms of addressing the current obesity and diabetes condition that we have. Our company also helped with the development, this is kind of exciting, of a pain medication that is non-addicting. So for quite some time before the pandemic, we have an opioid epidemic where people will go
Right.
to outpatient surgery, and then we will give them pain medication, but that's opioid that's going to be addicting, and then they become addicted to that. So that's a hard problem. But uh, together with millions of people, I don't want to get wrong impression that we're the only one did it. No, there's like millions of people who helped this one. But like a few weeks ago, there's a company called Vertex that got approval from the FDA for a non-opioid medication, meaning the people who undergoes this surgery will get pain relief without the potential for addiction. And that was a very big, exciting thing that happened in the research community. And then for us, of course, we just expanded our ACT site here, just expanded. Um, it's funny, Danny. I go into a lot of nostalgia because I've been doing this for 19 years. I remember I saw our site before is around 8,000 square feet. Now we're in 43,000 square feet,
Wow.
45,000 square feet, and we're still expanding. And part of that is having several facilities inside the facility itself, meaning the own safety laboratory. So before, when we get the blood from the patient, then we have to courier it out from Pasadena or wherever. Right now, that lab is in-house, which means the turnaround of those laboratory samples is much faster. our doctors and the doctors of the pharmaceutical side, as well as the CRO, will have a um, faster viewing time for those laboratories. So it's kind of exciting. But I'm very excited about the company party. I just literally was doing
Yeah,
the arrangement before I jumped on.
that definitely sounds like fun.
It does.
Well,
I can invite you if you're in the area. It's just at Bowlmore, so we reserve the whole bowling alley there.
oh, nice, nice, nice. Yeah, fun stuff, fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Dr. DeLeon, thank you so much for sharing what you do and how you do it and how you guys can help people who have ailments. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you and wanted to participate or just wanted to learn more about it, how could they do that?
Yeah, they can reach me in my email at j.deleon. That's my last name, Deleon, at sanexcel.com. That's Cenexel. And this goes across the board. Like if there are people wanting to work in this industry, feel free to send me an email. You can, of course, you need certain certifications for certain roles like doctors, nurses. However, there are a lot of roles also in clinical trials that doesn't need those specific certification. As long as you're willing to learn, as long as you want to help other people, that's a good start. Now, also there's some people who are study participants. Like
Mhm.
we respect them if they're interested in terms of helping us develop new medication. Also in that email, I answer that as well. And also
Wow.
for the business part of this, Danny. So I know you're very involved in this. Clinical research is an industry that people can get in terms of because we need space, right? You need facilities, things of that nature. So if like you have your listeners who are interested, hey, I want to make my own company, we're more than willing to talk, not to be a competitor, of course. But what I'm trying to do is have more people be involved in clinical trials because we would definitely need it in terms of making everyone be healthier and better and safer.
Right. No, no, that's really good. Yes. So if anybody who's listening, those are a lot of offers there of
Yep.
different potential possibilities. So get a hold of Dr. DeLeon for that. And Dr. DeLeon, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for our listeners, please go to ocpowerplayers.com. Follow us on your favorite channel. Thanks so much, Dr. DeLeon.
Thanks, Danny. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Orange County Power Players. Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at ocpowerplayers.com/guest.